And a very good morning, everybody. Welcome in to another edition of the Pattison Ave Sports Show. I'm your host, James Scores, and with you and with me, as always, is a group of companions on a very busy Saturday morning. Joey Marks, good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, James. Good morning, Philadelphia. It's a bright and great Saturday morning, especially after a blowout victory from the Philadelphia Phillies and a great victory and a great preseason game by the Philadelphia Eagles. Football's in the air. I can smell it.
Smell
I
it?
can taste it. Better yet, I can taste cowboy blood too.
Yeah,
So,
sharks in the water, my friend.
yes, sir.
Joining us today, hopefully, will be Mark Baker. From I think he's on a couple shows here on Hardcore Sports Network, but we got a lot to get to on this busy Saturday. Like I said, the Phillies getting a good win last night over the Texas Rangers to begin that series up in Texas, and nothing better against Texas than seeing here an Eagles chance in Texas last night too. So it's a little bit of a preview of our Birds taking on the Cowboys in Week 1 coming up very, very soon. But Joe, we got a very busy Saturday ahead of us. So simply put, where do we begin on this beautiful Saturday?
Well, we're gonna begin with the Eagles because
Yes, sir.
man, oh man, it was nice to see football once again,
Mm.
and like I can't believe we're starting a new season already. Like this is what it feels like when you are Super Bowl champions and you play the last game of the season, and the off season feels very short,
Yeah.
like it very accelerated in that way. And we are like not that far from opening night, banner night against the Cowboys. But first, let's talk more about a good game Cincinnati Bengals team that came in to play a preseason game against your Philadelphia Eagles. And James, the Bengals decided that they were going to play their starters, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Uh, my feeling is, what what was your impression of the Cincinnati Bengals strategy to play their starters? I mean, we Zach Taylor went on record as to say that the reason why he was playing his starters was because they got off to a slow start last year, a really slow start. So, what's your takeaway from, because old school preseason football used to be you would play your starters for some of the preseason games.
Yeah.
That's not always been the case, at least for the Philadelphia Eagles. Cincinnati Bengals taking a different strategy. What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting to say the least because, like, in this day and age of football, I mean, nobody plays their starters in preseason anymore. There'll be like a couple of teams here and there that are like old school. Like, for an example, like Andy Reid, I think he still plays his starters, even
Yep.
though they won a majority of their Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I found it interesting on I found it interesting on Thursday rather. Joe Burrow, getting an opening drive and actually scoring a touchdown on them. But the one thing I was really happy to see, more than anything, Joe, is that after when they were down 7-0, they went all the way back down the field and scored right away. I mean, you would have thought like, oh, like Joe Burrow's having this coming out party and the defense is going to look rusty. I mean, everybody was trying to make that excuse on the front of the Eagles, like, oh, Jamar Chase looked really good against Keely Ringo, and Joe Burrow looked like he's back to midseason form. And I'm finding like myself like, okay, so he looked good against second and third stringers. So imagine if it was the Eagles' first stringers, like the Jalen Carters, the Nolan Smiths,
Mhm.
Quinion Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean. I wonder how it would feel if they actually did play in that preseason game on Thursday night. And I said to myself too, is that sometimes you got to worry about injuries on that front too, especially with your starters being out there. I mean, I'm not saying it's a big thing, but at the same time too, I mean, it's just that yeah, I mean, it's in this day and age of football, it's concerning for other players. Um, we'll be looking forward to seeing, obviously, but at the same time, too, I mean, I think it's just the other thing that, with the injury front, is like kind of risky in this day and age of football when you
Especially
put.
for Joe Burrow.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
Joe Burrow has had some injuries, significant injuries in his career. I believe even, like, T. Higgins had an injury, I think, last year, and so, like, when you play these guys, you have a higher likelihood of anything happening. I go back to Aaron Rodgers a couple years ago where he didn't even
yeah,
really get touched, and he went down with an injury like 4 snaps into the season
yeah,
when he was with the Jets. And like this is perspective is that you put Joe Money, Joe Burrows, out there on a preseason game, anything can happen. And
yeah,
look, thank God it didn't happen, but yeah, Zach Taylor is playing a little bit with fire in that regard. Now, Joe Burrow looked good in the first, quarter and a half or first quarter. This is a guy that, people have already crowned as one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And for me, I'm still out on him. And I know he's got the stats as far as passing yards and touchdowns and all of that, but I also kind of look at it from a perspective of the Philip Rivers syndrome.
right,
Philip Rivers had a lot more passing stats only because he was always down in the
right,
game. His defense never could hold a lead, and so therefore he had to throw the ball more. Joe Burrow's defense. We talk about playing starters in that Thursday night game. Tanner McKee, and we're going to dive a little deeper into Tanner McKee in a minute. But Tanner McKee responded to Joe Burrow's opening drive with an opening drive touchdown for himself with a tush push.
yep,
And so you have to kind of keep something in mind. That drive that Tanner McKee executed was against the first team Bengals defense. Now, I get it. The Bengals defense is nothing to write home about from last year, and it's definitely nothing to write home about this year. My point is this is that when it comes down to what Joe Burrows is able to do, he's able to do all these stats, passing stats, with the talented receivers he has because he's never got a sustainable lead. He never can just sit back and have a 14 to 21 point lead and just sit back and cruise, hand the ball off. Like that's just not what happens. But let's dive into the other quarterback on that side, um, the Tanner McKee.
mm,
Tanner McKee is a third year. He's going into his third year on his rookie deal.
mm-hmm,
This is a guy that not many people had circled as the guy to watch.
right,
And Tanner McKee, the last 2 seasons, his first 2 seasons, I should say, has really proven that he can be a quality quarterback,
mm-hmm,
both when he's come in garbage time or when he's had to come in due to injury, or in this case, coming in for a preseason game. James, I got to ask Tanner McKee, 2 questions. Number one, what was your first impressions of that first quarter by Tanner McKee? Because he was probably as on the ball as Joe Burrows. He was as game as Joe Burrow was. So, number one, what was your impressions of Tanner McKee? Number two, do you think that the Eagles should be thinking about using Tanner McKee as an asset to get better in other areas, whether through draft or a player trade?
well, I mean, the first question I would like to see with my the thing that I thought was very appalling on Tanner McKee's part on Thursday night. I thought it was really good on the part of for me. I thought it was a very good first quarter for him. I mean, you think about, like, obviously there's going to be a lot of melee going on. Excuse me, about the quarterback and I quote quarterback factory or quarterback controversy, but there's no quarterback controversy. There's no
No.
quarterback factory. But overall, I thought he looked very good. I thought he did very well on Thursday night. I thought he played to the extent that he did. I mean, the way I look at Tanner McKee is that he's like the Nick, like you brought up yesterday on Fly Like an Eagle. He's like the Nick Foles of the team. But the difference is with Foles is that he was like hot and cold at times. That he was like good at one point, and then the other. And I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Foles after taking us to a Super Bowl and also winning us a Super Bowl. I mean, I loved Foles. I mean, he was a great quarterback. But the problem was with Foles was that he was hot and cold. I mean, he was like 1 minute he was like really a like echelon of greatness, and then the next minute he looks like he forgot how to play football. Not saying Tanner McKee's hot and cold, but I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to give now, because you think about now that the Eagles didn't bring anybody in like a backup, like kind of like a not Joe Burrow. I mean, like a Kenny Pickett back in the day, or Marcus Mariota or Gardner Minshew. I mean, this guy is the perfect backup to have right now, right next to Jalen Hurts, no question about it. And the second question, the question that you asked me was, what was it again? I'm sorry, Joe.
You know, he went toe to toe with Joe Burrow.
Oh, okay.
In that game. And knowing that Joe Burrow is this quote unquote great quarterback and elite quarterback, Tanner McKee stayed right even stride for stride with Joe Burrow. So what does that tell you as far as like should the Eagles strike while the iron's hot and Tanner McKee's stock is way up and possibly trade him for use him as an asset in a trade to potentially either pick up a draft pick or a player that at a position that we are in dire need for?
Yeah. So, I don't think it's going to be something to keep a close eye on, especially and then later months. So obviously, when you think about like the trade deadline coming, and also like coaches looking for quarterbacks, like kind of like if Kellen Moore, they'll try to give a phone call to the say, hey, I'll give you an arm and a leg for Tanner McKee to get him in here because I got a quarterback factory myself. Or maybe like the Colts, for a good example, could be another team like Shane Steichen will probably is, because apparently now it looks like Anthony Richardson got hurt again in that game on Thursday night against the Ravens. So that's something to keep a close.
And that goes back to our point about playing your starters in the preseason, the risk you take.
Exactly right. So the thing, I guess the other thing too was that I don't think right now I don't think we should be able to trade him, because if you trade him, like right then and there, you're gonna be like then you're gonna deal with like a guy like a DTR that has to be the backup, and then like Jalen Hurts has to play a full 17 game season, which he would if he wants to. I mean, depending on injury. But then, say for example, Hurts goes down, right? God forbid goes down, and you have to put in like DTR or Will McCord or maybe somebody in that effect. I would say right now, if like Jalen Hurts goes down, I think I can trust Tanner McKee. Hopefully it would never happen. God forbid, knock on wood. But if the time calls for it, the only time I want to see not see Jalen Hurts, the only time I want to see Tanner McKee is that if the Eagles are just blowing the cover off the ball and they have a 31-7 lead, and it's like the Eagles have the game in the bag, and Tanner McKee's just like jotting down stats, or seeing him like when the Eagles won the number 1 seed or the NFC East, or like everything's all locked up, and you just don't need, and the game is like meaningless,
Yeah, and like I kind of view Tanner McKee, and I brought it up yesterday in Fly Like an Eagle about him feeling like a Nick Foles. And, Nick Foles, I said it back when Nick played with Carson. I was asked, like, would you trust Nick Foles over Carson Wentz for a whole season? And I answered really poignantly and said no. And here's the thing: Nick Foles is not a regular season quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guy you can depend on for the long haul. But for whatever reason, Nick Foles in the bright lights shines the brightest.
He does.
Like that was the difference. I literally said, look, I get it. It makes no sense. When we had Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, I said Carson is a great regular season quarterback. If I had both of those like we did, my theory at the time was let Carson play the whole regular season and let Nick play the postseason.
Right.
Because, yeah, okay, I get it. That's really asinine because you got Carson Wentz who plays all regular season and get you to the playoffs, and then you're gonna say, nah, you get to sit down. Like, you got us here, now let Nick take us the rest of the way. But the fact of the matter is there are certain players, and Jalen Hurts is a nice combination of both. He's a good regular season quarterback, and he shines the brightest when the lights are bright too.
Right.
And like that's the difference. That's the ultimate goal for any franchise to gain a quarterback is that you want to have that combination. When we had Carson Wentz, we didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, well, Carson never got a chance. Yes, because Carson always got hurt.
Yeah.
Like he always put himself at a risk. Jalen Hurts is very calculated about what his decision making is, whether it's to run the ball or to throw the ball. And I feel like that's what makes him a better quarterback overall. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I that's a very good point there by Carson Wentz, because I thought about this later on, like after his Eagles career was over, and I said to myself, say for example he was like a fully healthy for that 2017 year, and he took on the Falcons. I mean, our luck might have been just like the Rams and the Saints that had to get there instead of the Vikings or the Falcons that year. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself imagine him playing in a game that was either against the Rams with Aaron Donald or the Saints with Cameron Jordan. And I said to myself, I don't even think Carson Wentz is going to be. I mean, I wouldn't say he'll be healthy for that game, but I would never know because after I saw that game against Seattle when he went down with that injury, it was just like there was like an excellent way to happen. Especially like if he didn't get hurt in that game, in that Rams game, in the game that was up in LA when they captured the NFC East in 2017. He could have easily got her in one of those playoff games. I mean, I can say it right now. I mean, the craziest thing about it was it's just, I mean, I don't want to say, I mean, he was an MVP that year. I mean, he like ripped the cover off the ball like we were talking about in baseball terms. But at the same time, too, I mean, I wasn't for certain if Carson Wentz was going to stay fully healthy for those playoff games, especially let alone that Seattle game that happened a couple years later after they did win the Super Bowl with Foles.
Yeah, and you got to kind of think. It's a great point, and you got to kind of think from 2017 in that Rams game to that Seattle game in the playoffs. This is a guy that would not take care of his body, in the sense that if you're susceptible to certain hits, you ought to know how to protect yourself, guard yourself. A couple of the Jalen Hurts injuries that Jalen has had to do more with like where he was playing and not necessarily how lack of protecting himself. Like for instance, when he got hurt in Chicago, that field was like cement.
Right.
Like so when he got drilled into the ground, anyone's going to get hurt when you get put into the ground like that on a field like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the thing too is that with Jalen Hurts, I mean, the injuries are not like they're not like apparent, like they're not like serious. I mean, they're not serious injuries like Carson Wentz had, because with the injuries that Carson Wentz sustained, It was a rib injury. Then he had the back. Then he had the ACL or the ACL MCL injury. Then the Super Bowl year, the
Yep.
concussion. It's just like every single year, it felt like it was like we're here, like kind of like we talked about with Bryce Harper with his injuries
Yep.
status quo, like a couple months ago when we were talking about Bryce Harper's lack of injuries, and it's the same thing with Joel Embiid. It was the same thing with Ben Simmons. I mean, well, not Ben Simmons because Ben Simmons couldn't just like he didn't want to be here, so he didn't have the guts to succeed here, like John Kruk would say. But overall, the thing I was really surprised about with Jalen Hurts is that even when he gets hurt, it's not like full like long term injury. Like
Yeah.
he's back within a week or so. I mean, everybody was like saying after that injury he sustained against the Commanders, going to say, okay, who's going to be the quarterback in that playoff game? And honestly, he didn't even miss a beat. He didn't even miss a beat in those playoffs.
Well, you gotta remember, like in the last 4 or 5 years of Jalen Hurts' career,
Sure,
he's only missed 7 or 8 games.
sure, yeah,
That is a pretty, you know, decent amount of games played. And you know what? We say this all the time. And this is a credit to Tanner McKee.
mm-hmm,
When you have competition and you have like a good quarterback room, and look, I said this in the beginning about Jalen Hurts.
mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts has been in really good quarterback rooms, both in Alabama and Oklahoma.
Oh yeah,
Kyler Murray, Tua, he's been in really good quarterback rooms. And you have someone like Tanner McKee, you wouldn't jump out off the page to you that Tanner McKee is a a good contributor in that quarterback room, but he is because he's very strategic. And that's what a backup quarterback usually has to be. I look at like some of these third string quarterbacks that are now like coordinators and position coaches in the NFL. Mike Kafka is the first one that comes to mind. Mike Kafka was a
yeah,
third
right.
string quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was an offensive coordinator at one point. So you got to understand, like, sometimes the backup quarterbacks, even though they don't get the same amount of praise and accolades as the starting quarterback, they need to contribute something in that quarterback room to make that starter better, to make that starter more improved. And you know what? Tanner McKee, this preseason game, this last Thursday, proved to me that it's not just talk. It's not just, here's what you do, Jalen. Da, 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 da. It's, this is what you do, and this is how you do it. And I feel more confident with Tanner McKee on this roster. And honestly, I would say I'm going to go as far as to say this. Tanner McKee is the heir apparent to Jalen Hurts. He will either be the backup for the rest of the tenure of Jalen Hurts, or if Jalen Hurts, gets to a point where, his contract is just not feasible anymore, Tanner McKee will be a nice fill in, nice stopgap quarterback until the next one comes along. And so my feeling is Tanner McKee belongs here and only here right now. I'm not willing to give him up for anything really. Now, if the Seattle Seahawks or the LA Rams got bent over a barrel and really were willing to give up the sun, the moon, and the stars for Tanner McKee, then yes, I'm going to take and field phone calls for Tanner McKee, but I may be very hesitant unless the price is right. I brought it up last night on Fly Like an Eagle. If the price tag is a Jared Verse or a Trey Woolen, like, yeah, okay, those kind of people kind of intrigue me and definitely might be helpful. But I'm not willing to move Tanner McKee for a second or a third round pick in which, let's be honest, that player might not see the field for a year or two after he's drafted. Because
Yeah,
of the depth that we have on this team.
yeah. Michael Papernick checks in. And he says, "Do you think Tanner McKee could be the next AJ Philly as when the Eagles traded Philly for a second round pick back in the day?"
Well, you got to remember, AJ Feely was traded for that second round pick later in his career. I believe AJ Feely was here for a while. Between AJ Feely, Ty Denver, Coy Denver, like all those guys were quality backups for Donovan McNabb.
Right.
So, do I feel like there's an option down the road that Tanner McKee could be that AJ Feely? Sure. It just depends on. I don't think it's that now because here's my thing: is Tanner McKee has this year and next year on his contract. So he's not for me, there's no rush to get rid of him.
Right.
My feeling is he's not his stock isn't going to free fall. If anything, it's going to grow. And I'm okay with that. If you can get a second round pick for Tanner McKee next year when we may need more of the youth after paying someone like a Jalen Carter or a Jordan Davis or a Nolan Smith, because believe me, more contracts, more high price contracts are coming up.
Yeah,
And
that they
you
are.
know, speaking of contracts and speaking of Joe's Georgia Bulldogs,
Ooh.
my next question is about a Georgia Bulldog. And James,
Yeah.
I know this one's gonna kind of sting for you because it's
Yeah.
kind of gonna sting for me too. Keely Ringo
Yep.
had a really poor outing on Thursday. Now, he wasn't out there for very long, but he had a poor outing. My question to you is this: does Keely Ringo make this 53-man roster, and why?
You know, Joe, after Thursday night, I don't know, man. I mean, it's just I I want to be skeptical about, and also I want to be excited about what Keely Ringo does. And honestly, I said to myself probably back a few years ago that this guy could be another star in the making. If you can paint the picture, Ringo, star of the Beatles, and
Eh.
I try to kill two birds with one stone here. But overall, man, I was really, really disappointed in how he played on Thursday. I thought he did not play well. The reads were really bad. He made Jamar Chase look like Chad Ochocinco all over again. I think he just looked like it was just like it looked so bad on his part that I said to myself is that even when I saw the stuff he was doing was like, dude, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing? And
I can
sometimes it was
remember
just
I can remember the draft that he came out because I believe it was him and N'Kobe Dean. It was the same draft.
yeah,
And
Emma
I
Nolan
remember
Smith, yeah.
yeah, I remember that me and you were texting back and forth because we were still reeling that we got N'Kobe Dean in the third round.
Yep.
And we were like, wow, okay. The only other guy that was on our board was
Yeah.
another Bulldog by the name of Keely Ringo.
Yep.
And when we actually drafted Keely Ringo, I'm like, wait, we got him? Like, wait a minute. First, we were dumbfounded that we were able to get N'Kobe Dean. And then we were able to get Keely Ringo. We were just like, wait a minute. Is the league this stupid? Now, that being said,
Before we go any further here, Mark Baker just checks in for the first time today. What's going on, brother? How you been, man?
I've been all right. My apologies, guys.
Yeah, no
no problem.
worries. So we were just talking about we were talking about the Tanner McKee stuff and on the Eagles preseason overhaul, how they did. Right now we're just talking about Keely Ringo's disappointing outing on Thursday night though. So it's all good, man.
Okay.
So, Mark, I'll go to you with a couple other questions. So, Tanner McKee, what was your impression of Tanner McKee on Thursday? This is a guy who's a backup quarterback that went against the first team defense for the Cincinnati Bengals and went toe to toe with a quarterback that is considered one of the elite quarterbacks in the league in Joe Burrow and his starting receivers. What was your first impressions of Tanner McKee?
Oh, well, I thought it was interesting. On the Eagles' social media, they had a video of him leading the pregame huddle. I thought that was an interesting move. And it makes me kind of think about how it's similar to what Cleveland may be doing for Shador Sanders. They know they might have something with Arch Manning coming down the road. They might try to get some draft capital for, if Shador plays well or plays well enough. If there's a situation where he's not the future, they may try to give him some first team reps to show other teams like, hey, this guy can play. And, to a degree, it could be that the Eagles are trying to do that with Tanner McKee. Cincinnati's defense is a big question, but the fact that if you see Tanner McKee with the leadership and also the ability to sling it around the yard, I mean, I don't know what you could get for him. I mean, if you could get a 4th round or 5th round pick, I think that'd be a steal. But there is definitely a team out there that, I mean, you got the AFC South with the Jags, the Colts. I mean, Trevor Lawrence doesn't seem like it's really been panned out, and this is probably his last chance. Indy with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, not really being like there are teams, there are options out there, and I'm curious to see kind of where they take it with Tanner McKee, because I think it's very interesting that they're having him run pregame, they're giving him first game reps. Because mind you, we do have Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the roster, who plays somewhat of a similar style in terms of mobility as Jalen Hurts. I think it's very interesting. I would say more it's that it might have to do with maybe some type of move, some type of how he's seen something deep in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple comments here. So join us here from Cedar Hill, Texas, is David Burns for the first time on the show. So thanks for joining us here today, my friend. And like always, hit that like and subscribe button on our YouTube and social media platforms here. And also, Michael Pepper, guys, very concerned about Keely Ringo's game against the Bengals on Thursday night. So he says, but do you think not having the number one defense out there putting pressure on Burrow and throwing off his timing could have hurt Keely Ringo in the process too? And the other question he was asking David Burns is about Shador Sanders. So I guess what he was saying is that he says, fellas, you sum up just what I wanted to hear about Shador Sanders. So I'm guessing he'll be playing next weekend for the Eagles against the Browns, and that's the second game of the preseason. That's set for next Saturday, so it will be a busy Saturday afternoon for all of us, because I can bet we'll have the Pattison Ave Sports Show in the morning, and then right after that we'll get ready for Eagles and Browns at the link for the second time in the preseason. But overall, what's your reaction when you hear? What's your guys' immediate response? I mean, I guess you could say, what's your immediate reactions here about these couple comments that are coming out right now, Joe?
So when we talk about Keely Ringo and saying about he makes a valid point that we didn't get to the quarterback very very much on Thursday night.
No,
we just did. Trey Robinson was the only player that had a sack in that game. And, my feeling is the whole point of preseason, especially for that front four, was to really see who was going to come shining through. And we kind of had an idea that Trey Robinson was going to be that guy. Like, we had an idea about that early on, but I don't even know who played edge. Like that's how quiet things were. Is that, I was very disappointed with the front four. Mm-hmm. And maybe even the front seven. I heard Jeremiah Trotter Jr.'s name mentioned a couple times. I heard Jahad Campbell's name mentioned a couple times. But, overall, Smiley Mondin, Mondin had kind of an okay game. But, he had some coverage issues for sure. But, yeah, there wasn't a lot of pressure. Now, was that by design? Was that Vic Fangio playing a very vanilla offense to really kind of give the defensive players, these young kids, the ability to play fast. I don't know, but if that's the case, I'm not going to make the excuse because we didn't give more pressure to Joe Burrow that's the reason why Kelee Ringo played poorly. You're responsible for playing up on that receiver. I get it. It's Jamar Chase. I get it. It's T. Higgins. I get that these are elite receivers, but your job is now to be CB2. Like, that's what you're vying for. And that's a very coveted position right now on this defense. And if you are not, and look, I wasn't very impressed with Adoree Jackson either. So, like, as much as I'm throwing Kelee Ringo under the bus, Adoree Jackson did not flash for me like a veteran should. Now look, he got released and cut, not picked up again by the Giants. He's been around the league. This is a guy that, when he played for Tennessee back in the day, yeah, I felt like he was a good nickel corner. I don't know if he's a good CB2. Now, there's talks. Sidney Brown got hurt in the playoff in the preseason game. This comes to no shock to anyone, considering he plays with his hair on fire a little recklessly. This is going to be an interesting conversation in the next couple weeks, whether or not Sidney Brown will be better before the regular season starts, or whether or not we have the conversation of starting Cooper DeJean at safety, which is going to put a deficit and more pressure on guys like Adoree Jackson and Kelee Ringo.
Well, we still got Andrew McCouber coming. I think the other thing too is that's the one thing I'm not necessarily worried about more than anything, because that secondary front, even though if Sidney Brown's not the guy, I think right then and there, I think that's going to be Andrew McCouber's job to lose.
I would not also be surprised, and this name has been floated out there. I also would not be surprised if Justin Simmons was picked up on free agency.
Sadly, Justin Simmons is not available anymore. He went to Houston because C.J. Gardner-Johnson went down with an injury during the week in training camp.
So yes. That option's off the table. So now more pressure is on a guy like Nakuba and Kelee Ringo and Adoree Jackson. So Mark, I'll ask you, what do you think about Kelee Ringo's performance? And I'll ask the question I asked to James. Do you think Kelee Ringo will make this 53-man roster, and why?
I tend to think that he will, but I think the bigger issue here is that I think what we're gonna find, and this is just a little small example of it, is that a lot of what we have seen last year and the past couple of years haven't really come up on the stat line. The impact of a Darius Slay, an impact of a Brandon Graham, the impact of a C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and before that Rodney McLeod. The impact of those guys that brought veteran leadership, really being able to mentor young guys. And now you get a little bit of a slight discount with Adoree Jackson. You're putting a lot of faith in Kelee Ringo, and from a standpoint of who else do you got at that point? This is a bit of a concern when you get a little bit younger on defense, is that we're really relying on guys that are, I'm not sure if they really can play, and I'm not sure if he shouldn't make the roster. I think he really should, because there's a reason why Adoree Jackson has bounced around the league. There's a reason for that. When I think of Adoree Jackson's name, it makes me think of a guy that's a similar corner that's bounced around the league back in the day, which was DJ Hayden. A guy that was drafted by the Raiders and eventually was bouncing around the league. Like we don't have a surefire at CB2. I mean, like that's a position where you can afford to have a certain level of competition.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to have him on the roster, but you're going to just have to face that this is going to be the consequence of getting younger on defense and putting a lot of the pressure and the onus on some of these guys like DeJean, like Quinyon Mitchell, because now they're the guys and now they have to step into the role of what Slay meant to this defense, what CJ Gardner-Johnson did, and now they have to play that role. But now you don't have that like young, flashy, productive rookie. You have a guy that's, like they're going to go after during the year.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we got a couple more comments here. So this is good stuff here by our comment section today. It's coming in hot. So, Mike Peppernick again checks in and says, "Could you see DeJean move to the outside and Simmons to play, Simmons,
Justin Simmons.
Justin Simmons? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he was on the delay. He didn't realize that he got picked up like I did.
Okay, I got you. So basically, he was saying to play safety just to figure out that slot, but unfortunately, Simmons is not available anymore.
Yeah.
Mitzkowski, I'm sorry, Joe.
But here's the thing. So I will kind of like rephrase his question. Could I see Cooper DeJean going out to the outside for CB2 and put someone like Nakubo at starting safety? That is a possibility.
It could.
I just think that's more of a desperate move than anything else, because you don't want to hamstring Cooper DeJean's real talent by just putting him on an island with things. He's better serviced if he's kind of got a little bit more flexibility with where and how he can move. It's one of the reasons why he was such a strong asset last year, is because in the nickel corner, he was able to basically play a little bit freer with his coverage. And if you put him as CB2, he's restricted to governing that one guy, which makes his flexibility it takes that off the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitch Kelsey makes a good pun here. Ringo Starr versus Kiwi Ringo. like instead of Ringo Starr, we got Kiwi Ringo. So, to quote Ringo Starr, we need a little help from his friends to get him back into a groove again.
You got that right. Whether it's the Bulldogs or whether it's the Eagles,
he
needs a little help from his friends is definitely right.
Yeah, absolutely. So Peppernick again checks it. It says Michael Peppernick again says, with Simmons going to Houston, could you see the scenario of DeJean moving to QB2 or Brown or McCool, like you brought up, with McCool playing safety? So I guess it's already been said. This is actually a very good one here. So what about signing Asante Samuel Jr., who is out now with a neck injury since April, since coming into this season, and just letting him heal up? I mean, I would be okay if you could take a flyer on Asante Samuel Jr. too, man.
Well, here's the thing. I've always been a fan of Asante Samuel Jr. And it would be fitting to have another son of a former Eagle come and play on this defense.
Yep.
The other part that I think we are kind of missing out on, because this deal has already been done, is not having jumped on, and you and Mitch brought it up a couple weeks ago on Fly Like an Eagle, whether or not we should have jumped on the Jair Alexander deal.
Yeah.
And now I think we're kind of regretting that we didn't. And maybe that is something that we will regret. Like Mark brought up, that CB2 is an okay position to kind of figure out in platoon and figure out who's going to fit that role. It's fine to do that. However, that does put more pressure on guys like Quintana Mobe and Cooper DeJean and pretty much the rest of the defense. That being said, the sooner you can get CB2 figured out, the better your odds are of being able to be more of that top 10 defense that you aspire to be in this upcoming NFL season.
And I'm not going to be one guy that's going to sit here and say that Bennett's going to be the savior. I mean, hopefully he would be. I mean, look, we didn't think Ronald Darby was going to be anything special either. But then, I mean, Darby was good. Was good for that Super Bowl year, but then he was shaky after that. But
well, I'll take what is it, Rasul Jackson?
Rasul Douglas. There you go.
Rasul Douglas. Yeah. Rasul Douglas was another one that was like a fly under the radar kind of corner, and look at the impact he made for this defense. So maybe Bennett is that next Rasul Douglas. I hope so, but I haven't seen enough to really kind of merit that. And this is a guy that's coming off of a bad injury from last year. While we're on that topic, Mark, what's your impressions of Bennett?
Listen, I tend to believe that come back to me on that one. I'm still trying to formulate my thoughts on that.
Okay. So
sorry, I thought we lost you, my friend.
Yeah. So let's move on to the receivers. And on last Thursday's game, you had the Philadelphia Eagles and Tanner McKee and DTR that were basically throwing to three primary receivers that essentially were lighting up the Cincinnati Bengals defense. You had another Cooper, Darius Cooper. We have another Coop. And then we had Johnny Wilson and Aeneas Smith. I took my time with that one because I didn't want to call him Aeneas Williams again. But Aeneas Smith, these are three guys that are very interesting. Now, Johnny Wilson's kind of a not fair kind of deal. This guy's 6'7". He's the tallest receiver in the NFL. It's kind of like, I call no fair if you're as a guy who's 5'9". Like a guy who's being 6'7" is genetically not fair to play receiver. But Johnny Wilson is a guy that I feel like should make this roster and could be an effective weapon in this regular season. I think he needs to be used more. I mean, if you post up, that guy could post up against any secondary guy and is going to have inches over them. All you have to do is throw it up high. Like the corner is going to have to jump on Johnny Wilson's back in order to like deflect it. Like you could throw it 8 feet, like 7 feet up in the air, and Johnny Wilson's just going to put his hands up and catch it. Whereas the cornerback who's 5'9", 5'10" has to jump a foot just to get to the ball. Like that is a big differential. Darius Cooper impressed me because this is a guy who's an undrafted free agent that we picked up, and he's kind of like fly under the radar, very much like a Ricks on the defense. We stole this guy in my mind. He had a great, college career, even though, look, he played for a Division II, I believe, team, the FBS. But he had 1,600 yards receiving in his senior year, in his last year in college. This is a guy that I feel like could be, that very underestimated receiver. I almost think that someone like a Johnny Wilson or a Darius Cooper could be a guy like, an Jason Avant.
Jason Avant. There you go. Oh, wow. There you go.
So I feel like they could be like that Jason Avant type player. And my feeling is someone like Aeneas Smith is a certifiable punt returner. You talk about a special teams guy. We may have a steal in this kid being our punt returner for the next foreseeable 5-10 years because he shows me flashes of a bit of that elusive nature. I wouldn't go as far as to say Devin Hester, not going that far yet, but I will say he's a guy that I feel like is worth watching in the rest of this preseason and going into this regular season. What do you, James? I'll start with you first. What did you think of these three receivers on Thursday's game?
I found them interesting to say the least, Joe, because if you think about those players you brought up, like Johnny Wilson and Darius Cooper and even Nia Smith, the thing that I was really excited to see is that like a couple of the people on the outside, the players on the outside looking in, like the Darius Coopers of the world, and also become like kind of like what we had a couple of years ago with the Paul Turners on the world. They always call it the darling football. Like you look for the preseason and say who is the darling at training camp and who's the guy that's going to be the big X factor. And Darius Cooper fits that message. I mean, Johnny Wilson did a great job. I thought he did well. I thought he did a great job on Thursday night. For me, I gotta say, Darius Cooper really stole the show on Thursday night more than anything. I mean, I like to see, and then the thing I was really happy to see too. Maybe we got ourselves a special teamer now, and both Nia Smith as a kick returner and a punt returner. Because those are times that a lot of things that happen on Thursday night. There was like a big question, like, do you put Cooper DeJean still as your punt returner and the football and later on in the football season just to save Cooper DeJean from getting hurt on that special team front? But I don't think you have to worry about that now.
Yeah.
I think with Nia Smith being there, I think that helps a lot. Oh, excuse me, that helps a lot too.
So, Mark, what did you think of these three receivers and what their performance looked like on Thursday night?
I forgot about that. I forgot about Avery Johnson. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. Well, with Johnny Wilson, I mean, the height is there, and you know what? It reminds me a lot of a tight end that played for the Denver Broncos back when Peyton Manning was around, Julius Thomas. He's got that sort of basketball skill when it comes to playing the skill position, and the reality is he gains 20 pounds more. You could argue that he could be disguised as a good pass catching tight end. That being said, he's not slow. He ran about a 4.5, but a team like the Jets out there that have struggled with tight end production the past couple of years look at a guy like Johnny Wilson and they're like, why don't you go play tight end? He's a very unique wide receiver talent. Now, can he be elite? No, I'm not really sure. It's more likely that a guy like Darius Cooper could have some type of play on the offense. When in reality, it's like, we appreciate that Jahan Dotson played well in the Super Bowl, but it was a bit of an underwhelming first year. About this time last year, we found out we were getting Jahan Dotson. We were thinking, wow, this guy's really going to provide some production at the number 3 wide receiver position, and it really hasn't panned out that way, with the exception of a couple of moments here in the playoffs. So there's definitely room for that. And also the reality is like the Eagles are probably going to have to make a decision on AJ Brown. Listen, after winning a Super Bowl and after the production that he's given us in the past couple of years, it's been worth it thus far. Last year, there was a couple of moments that I imagine the front office is looking at of like, when we're winning, it's fine. But I imagine with the comments that AJ Brown has made, the whole book story, which was fine. Everything is fine when you're winning. The reality is, it's like, at a certain point, the front office is going to probably say, listen, we've had enough. You have an underwhelming, maybe a 10-7, you lose in the wild card game. he's making a bunch of noise, and the team decides, I don't know. And so you need a guy like Darius Cooper. If you have that production, now can he be a 1? I'm not necessarily sure. But I think in terms of what we can see this year, I would say more Darius Cooper plays more of that impact than Johnny Wilson. But Johnny Wilson's like skill set and frame, I imagine the front office is looking at this as like, let's showcase this guy for the rest of the league, because he's built like a college tight end.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point by you, Mark, especially with the Julius Thomas. I would go one step further. I would go one step closer here. I would say that he's another version of what was his name? I forget his name. I know who. I was going to say Demaryius Thomas from the great late Demaryius Thomas, when he used to play with Peyton Manning with the Broncos back in the day. Tragically lost his life a few years ago. There's another one that sticks out to me the most, more than anything too, is that Chris Cooley's a good example of that too when he was with Washington. Yeah. So I just.
Well, I'll throw another name out there for both of you, Antonio Gates.
Yeah.
That is a guy that took the league by storm, because not many teams were using that.
Well, Dallas Clark is a good example.
Yeah,
too.
We weren't using that formula in the NFL for like an NBA like size player, like a 6'5", 6'6". And in Johnny Wilson's consideration, 6'7", type body frame. Now, look, I think if you look at Johnny Wilson and you look at this tight end room, could Johnny Wilson eventually be put in that tight end room? Sure, I think he could. But first things first, he has to put more weight on to do it. And that's fine. So leave him where he is. Have him work on his body. Have him work on bulking up. Maybe he's the replacement for Dallas Goedert. Maybe he's you pair him with someone like a Grant Calcaterra for the future. Maybe he's that guy. But right now, you can enjoy that this guy, with his size, with his ability, could make this roster and could be a difference maker as far as matchups. Like I said earlier, the idea that he's a matchup nightmare. All you have to do is kind of make the routes that free him open enough, that give him a one-on-one opportunity with a corner. I think if he's one-on-one with a corner, I think he's got a better chance of making a catch. I think if he gets like thrown into the middle of the field where he's more susceptible to running into a linebacker, and now all of a sudden you have two men kind of covering him, that's where I feel like you're covering up Johnny, and I think that's not the smart play. But speaking of offensive schemes, I wanted to, get your guys' impression. So obviously you're not going to show all your cards in the preseason. But Coach Petula is the new offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, he's been with the team for a while, since Nick Sirianni has arrived. My question to you guys, and James, I'll start with you. What was your impression of the offensive scheme that Petula drew up for this preseason game?
They never missed a beat. That's the most important key. I mean, they never missed a beat. I thought they played a very good balance style of football. I love to see. I like this. I like what they did with the running back balance with Will Shipley, and also how much I'm a big Shipley fan. Also like to see AJ. I also saw some good plays out of AJ Dillon too in that running game too, and even some of the youngsters like a couple players like Derek. What was his name? I forget his name. Why am I trouble on his name? Derek Powell, one of the backups to the backup running backs. For me, I gotta say right now, the one thing that really stuck out to me the most is that the level of balance that they had. Imagine this is because the one thing I was worried about more than anything, especially with this new offensive scheme, I said to myself was, okay, how is it going to affect the running game? And it only took me like 3 plays later to see Will Shipley go down the field. And I said, imagine that Saquon Barkley from his own 20-yard line, and he's loose and he goes in for 6. And I'm saying to myself, that's the one thing I was worried about, is that you think about a new offensive coordinator. We saw it before with Brian Johnson. We saw it before that it was more of a vanilla / inconsistent inconsistent offense rather. And I said to myself, is that Patillo is listening to Jalen Hurts is what he wants to do. And also I am really happy to see is that even though this is another offensive coordinator, it feels like they never missed a beat more than anything. That's the most important key here. And exactly in one more month, they're not going to miss a beat like they did last year with Kellen Moore. And I think they might be better than what they were last year with Kellen Moore going to admit.
Mark, same question. What did you think of Coach Patula's offensive scheme? I know that he is not going to show his cards, especially in the preseason. But from what you saw, I mean, this offense scored 3 touchdowns and then some, and moved the ball pretty effectively in that game. So, what's your impressions of Coach Patula's offensive scheme?
Well, based off of what I saw, what we've seen, like you said, they're not going to empty the tank, and obviously in a preseason game, but you can tell there's definitely an effort to really expand and grow the passing game, because the reality was, it worked for them pretty well. I mean, after the bye week, what they had decided, but they were gonna scale back. They were gonna scale back of the passing game, and it worked. And Saquon obviously had arguably the best season a running back or even an offensive player has ever had. Yep. That's worked for them. But now you have an entire offseason where teams have watched film, and now sure, you still have that same. In terms of personnel, you still have that levels. You still are solidified from a personnel standpoint, but now you have an off season where teams have watched film. You got to imagine that Washington's defense is going to be a little bit better than they were. Other teams as well. I'm not sold on the Cowboys and Giants, but the reality is that. Saquon has had trouble in the past with injuries. Now there has been guys that have sustained tough injuries early on in their career, and they've continued into their 30s injury free. And you can tell in terms of the lifestyle that Saquon lives is that he prioritizes his health, his wellness, and it showed last year. But again, 28, 29 years old is fairly young for a lot of positions in football, but it ain't young in terms of running, in terms of a running back. And we're not going to necessarily ask a AJ Dillon, go take the load that Saquon has had. So at the end of the day, it's that you could tell that the offseason's priority was, we need to have a little bit more of a dynamic passing game. Because when you know you're going to play the Philadelphia Eagles, you better be looking for 26. And listen, Super Bowl we did well. We fared well with the passing game that we had. But now the whole off season where teams' defenses can really scheme and really find the holes in our offense, we're going to have to get a little bit more dynamic. And you could just tell in the first game even with Tanner McKee, that's what their priority was this offseason, was to get more dynamic in the passing game.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that, with Coach Patula, he's been in this kind of organization, building his way back up. He's seen and heard a lot of different voices, from Brian Johnson to why am I blanking on his name? The guy who coaches for the Colts. But he's gone through a lot of offensive coordinators here with the Philadelphia Eagles, so he's got an understanding. He could take a little bit from each of their playbooks, what worked, what didn't work, and he has said that on the press conference. Like, he's been the guy that has paid attention to the things that haven't worked in the last 3 or 4 years. This is only going to improve Jalen's performance. Not to mention, this isn't a new voice in Jalen Hurts' his ear. This is a guy that Jalen has talked to. Jalen has had conversations with. This isn't a new person in the building. This is a guy that is familiar with some of the staff. He's familiar with what Sirianni wants. He's familiar with what Jalen Hurts wants. So you're right, Mark. Like, the dynamic has to change a little in order to keep these defenses that are going to scheme up for what they saw last year. We are not the hunter anymore. We are the hunted. And when that dynamic changes, so must the dynamic in which you attack opposing defenses. But before we move on to the Philadelphia Phillies, I wanted to just give a quick thank you and tell everybody about our great sponsor at GameTime.co. You want Eagles tickets for that Dallas Cowboy banner night? You want tickets for the Philadelphia Phillies October? Go to GameTime.co and go get them. James, tell them more about it.
Yeah, Joe, today's show is sponsored by our friends. It's been a while since we did it, but our friends over at GameTime.co need Phillies tickets or Eagles tickets last minute. Don't worry, GameTime.co has got you covered. You can check out your seat view before you buy, and also can snag on great discounts and so much more at GameTime.co. But remember to scan that QR code at the bottom of the screen right next to Kyle Schwarber and hopefully the MVP at the end of the season, or visit GameTime.co today. Visit them online at GameTime.co today. That's at GameTime.co today. Go Phils and go Birds.
So we're going to dive into the Phillies, and the Phillies had an amazing night last night, winning against the Texas Rangers 9-1. In an offensive explosion by Mr. Brandon Marsh, which we'll get to in a minute. But we had another little offensive spurt. A little guy by the name of Kyle Schwarber hit his 41st home run in the first inning. Didn't waste any time. This is a guy that is not long for the long ball. He is, very productive. And, I have to ask this question, and someone has to. Would love for someone. I know it's hard pressed for anyone to really do this, but is Kyle Schwarber the MVP of this league this year? Mark, I'll start with you. What I mean by hard pressed, who can argue this? Who can argue? I guess the only argument while Kyle Schwarber might not be the MVP is because he's the DH and he doesn't play the field. So, Mark, does Kyle Schwarber deserve to be MVP?
I think in terms of production, absolutely. Now today in baseball, it's that the batting average is kind of an overrated statistic. But if you really contextualize it, the other night, Schwarber's been the other night. I mean, I saw him hit one out towards Monty's angle up in left center field, which is like his power has gotten like he can distribute it all around the field. So while it's like, yeah, the batting average is, it's at around 250 and, we've been used to seeing him at 195. When you contextualize it, he's definitely a lot better at his power goes not just the pull side, but being able to go opposite and being able to go dead center. And now he's not really a one-trick pony anymore. Whereas before he was, he was the guy that we tried to get him as many as bats as possible by putting him leadoff, because ultimately it's like, if he got that one pitch, he's hitting it. He's hitting it. He's sitting off the signs up in over in CPP. But the reality is that it's a bit of a disadvantage for a Kyle Schwarber is that when on the outside looking in, right? Like we're all Phillies fans, and we see this on a night-to-night basis. And to your point about he's DH. Ohtani is also a DH, but we consider the Dodgers. We consider it's like that's Ohtani's team. The Phillies, it's more of okay. You think of Bryce Harper. To the outside fan looking in, they might not even consider is Kyle Schwarber the best player on the Phillies. They would consider that to be Bryce Harper. Like when living in Philadelphia, we've seen the ups and downs of Bryce Harper, and we've seen what Kyle Schwarber has done, and we've said, obviously the best player in the Phillies is Kyle Schwarber. But the outside looking in, it's that the entire league, it's that the guy plays DH, and he's a big home run hitter. But we consider that to be Bryce Harper's team. So it's a little bit tough because when you have a guy like Trey Turner that's also been able to play, and maybe not at an MVP caliber level, but he's definitely played at an all-star caliber level. And then you also have Bryce Harper, who has really solidified himself as he'll likely retire. It's tough to get that sort of level of notoriety that like an Ohtani would get, because it's like I said, when you think of the Dodgers, who's the first guy I think of the Dodgers? Ohtani. With the Phillies, it's who's the first guy you think of is Bryce Harper. And I think that somewhat matters in terms of the attention that a guy gets, but in terms of just the offensive production, and you see it just all around. It's just it seems like this guy anywhere in the zone, this guy can bomb it over the fence.
James, same question. This guy, Kyle Schwarber, has proven in most Philadelphia Phillies fans' minds to be the MVP. They're the ones that, without being prompted, had started to chant MVP because this guy, in everyone's viewpoint, has deserved it and deserves that MVP. My question to you is the same thing. Do you think Kyle Schwarber deserves MVP? And do you think that he deserves MVP despite being the designated hitter?
Well, it's interesting because you think about the times of the new designated hitter rule. I mean, Shohei Ohtani won the MVP last year for being a designated hitter too. So I'm guessing that's going to be the most important here too. But the one thing that Dave Dombrowski has to do this offseason, and this is what he has to do. So
that's what Kyle Schwarber hears every time he hits a home run. That's what he hears. Yep, that's what he hears. First inning home run. Yep. Second inning home run. Fifth inning home run. Yep. This is a guy that is, yes, this is a guy that's hearing that cash register go off more times than Dombrowski and John Middleton are like.
Michkowski, you the man.
Like, John Middleton is like, okay, this guy is going to cost me. Now, we will get into the potential for Kyle Schwarber's contract and numbers and everything at a later time because there's plenty of time to go into that.
But back to my point here before I go one step further. Yeah, you got to sign him. I mean, that's the most important thing, especially if he is the MVP this year. If they say, for example, the way they're going out right now, and if they don't sign Kyle Schwarber, you got to win the World Series. That's what it comes down to. If you're not gonna re-sign Kyle Schwarber, you gotta go to the World Series and you gotta freaking win it now. I mean,
well, what does it say about if Kyle Schwarber wins MVP, right? And Mark brought this up earlier. He brought this up earlier. Is that when you think of the Philadelphia Phillies, you think of Bryce Harper,
right?
The two highest paid players on the Phillies right now are Bryce Harper and Trey Turner, not Kyle Schwarber. You gotta ask yourself this question: Shohei Ohtani is who you think of when you think of the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
That price tag for Kyle Schwarber,
Mm.
is that going to start ranging on average? Like, we're not talking about him getting a $300 million contract because he's not going to be here for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, would the average, like, if you take the annual average of the salary that you're paying Harper and Turner, would you give that to Schwarber? I think you have to.
You have to.
I think you have to, because this becomes a perspective that he not only has earned it, but when you look at the caliber of players he's playing, like he's overperforming his contract. That's the way I kind of put it in a nutshell. He's overperforming his contract. And John Middleton said it when we in 2022 about Bryce Harper. This guy's underpaid. Well, thanks, John. You just basically set John Boris in like freaking negotiation mode. That's your own fault. But I could say the same thing for Kyle Schwarber. He's underpaid. And right now, every time he hits those home runs, he's hearing that cash register go off. And like that man is on a heater right now. 41 home runs. I wouldn't be all that surprised if he hit 60. I really wouldn't.
You
And
know,
look,
he could. He really could, man.
And look, he on this past week, he broke Ryan Howard's record to getting in 112 games. Basically, he broke the home run record for Ryan Howard. Ryan Howard had 38 home runs in 112 games back in 06, I believe it was. And this Schwarber had 40 in 112 games. I'm like,
Yep.
okay, this guy is just some kind of monster. But moving on, we're going to go to another award, Cy Young.
Oh.
Okay, so you got two pitchers, believe it or not, in the Philadelphia Phillies organization that's vying for the Cy Young, the most prestigious award for pitchers in the league. You got Zach Wheeler and Christopher Sanchez.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it last week, I believe, James, is that
Yeah.
Sanchez could very well steal this from Zach Wheeler.
He could. He really could.
My question goes to you, Mark. Which pitcher do you think deserves to be Cy Young on this pitching rotation? Zach Wheeler or Christopher Sanchez?
I would still go with Wheeler. The reality is with Wheeler is that when he's on when he's next to whoever's on the pitching matchup, I mean it's going to be a low scoring game. You're going to probably have only like maybe 2 or 3 chances to really make an impact in the game. And I will say with Christopher Sanchez, and this is kind of like the hype that we kind of got on with Ranger Suarez. Ranger's still a good productive pitcher, but to the level of production that he had last year and the year prior, certainly we're not going to make that assessment. But with the guy like Zach Wheeler, he's done it year in and year out for the past 4 or 5 years, and he's still that guy. He's that guy when Wheeler's pitching, it's going to be good. What I will say with Sanchez, though, is that he's becoming everything that we kind of hoped Aaron Nola would become, and that's great to have a number 2 when you have that number 2 that's behind Zach Wheeler. Because let's face it, with the World Series last year, the only time the Yankees were competitive was when Garrett Cole started. When you can have that elite starter, that's gonna bode you well when you're gonna play a Dodgers, a San Diego, maybe even the Mets down the road. You're gonna have to have that elite starter. But it's even better if you have 2, because now instead of losing in five and being like we only can compete one out of every 4 or 5 days, against an Ohtani and a Mookie Betts. Now you've got two. And now when you have two starters, it really opens you up, because now it's like, well, our third best pitcher is Ranger Suarez, who has definitely showed that when he's on, he's pretty tough to hit. So if anything, this just if anything, I would say Zach Wheeler is definitely the Cy Young Award winner, but it takes a lot of pressure off of him, knowing that, hey, look, what we thought Aaron Nola would be, Christopher Sanchez is becoming.
Same question, James. Which one gets the Cy Young, Sanchez or Wheeler?
Oh, well, this is one of those things that I would say that I like Zach Wheeler. He's a great pitcher in this league. He hasn't shown it the last handful of starts here, going back to that point game before the All-Star break. So if I have to pick one, I have to go with Sanchez right now. I have to go with Christopher Sanchez. I think he's definitely living up to the hype he has had. I mean, he's like Mark alluded to. He is definitely that second that game two starter if the postseason begins. I mean, Zach Wheeler is your number one, but then again, who knows what they'll do in that postseason? If they'll make Sanchez the game one starter, or they'll make Wheeler the game two starter. But overall, I mean, right now, I think it's pretty obvious that Zach Wheeler is not Zach Wheeler. I mean, Christopher Sanchez is definitely the Cy Young. And it also depends on this weekend, because his start has been pushed back until tomorrow afternoon. So I'll be curious to know what they'll do with that. But overall, I mean, the thing that was that is surprising, even last week when he was pitching against Screwball, I said to myself, this was going to be an ultimate pitcher's duel, and it turned out to be one of the disappointing outings of Zach Wheeler's season last week. Was a real disappointing outing. So for me, I got to go with Sanchez on who's definitely the Cy Young for 2025. So I got to go with Christopher Sanchez on this one too.
So I'm kind of, this has been a difficult question even when I made it up.
It's a good question.
Yeah. And here's the reason why, is because there can be an argument for either one. And both of you have kind of made the strong arguments for either one. And the where I kind of land is Zach Wheeler, and mainly kind of like where Mark's argument was, which is, he's been around the game for a lot longer, and so he understands, okay, the home stretch. He was the one that went to Rob Thompson and said, I need to push my start back. Mm-hmm. I have soreness in my shoulder. And he's like, I'll be fine, but I just need some time. Rob's like, fine, no problem. You're my guy. I want to protect you. Mm-hmm. So that being said, if Zach Wheeler on tomorrow is the Zach Wheeler that we have come to know in 2/3 of this season already, my feeling is you are looking at a guy that is on a mission. This is a guy that also was, the bridesmaid, never the bride, with the Cy Young race the last 2 years, right, to Chris Sale. So, and to others, this is a guy that felt like he got gypped. He's on a mission. And look, not to say that Christopher Sanchez will never become a Cy Young in his career. I think, you're seeing the beginnings of what Christopher Sanchez really going to bring in his career as a pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies. And let's all keep something in mind. Mark brought up something that we're just kind of glossing over. We have Zach Wheeler and Christopher Sanchez, two elite pitchers. Whether one is 1 and one is 2, regardless, you still have guy like Aaron Nola coming off the injured list that is a number 2 technically. We'll have to see what his stuff looks like. And then you have a guy in Ranger Suarez who could definitely be a 3 or 4 starter. You're talking about a rotation that, honest to God, people will be hard-pressed to figure out really where, before it was evident. You put this guy first, he's your number 1, game 1 starter. This is your game 2 starter. Now, it's very interchangeable. And so that gives a lot of options for Rob Thompson in the playoffs and in the home stretch. So believe me, I am rooting for Zach Wheeler so he can stop being the bridesmaid and now finally be the bride. Now, that being said, I want to kind of go into the whole Mitch Kofsky and
Oh
Frank
no.
Finnegan situation. I told you guys I was coming for you. So this is laying out the premise. So the bet is going to be real simple. I'm not going to because I don't drive and whatnot, and I know it would be a hassle for maybe either one of you guys to drive. So this is what we're going to do.
Hmm.
I would usually say we bet a case of beer, but instead of it being you guys delivering me a case of beer or mailing me a case of beer or whatever, and yes, I already know that I'm going to win this bet. That's why I'm saying that. But I am going to say a case of beer is usually $30. Okay, so the bet is for $30, which will be equivalent for anyone buying a case of beer or whatever your preference is. It's the cash equivalent. Thank you. So the bet is for $30. Now let me explain what the bet is in reference to. Frank Finnegan and Mitch Kofsky both said that the Philadelphia Phillies will not make the playoffs this year. Not how far they would go. Not how far they would go. They said they would not make the playoffs this year. Now, Frank has not been on the air for a while. I will have to get his, updated take, but as it currently stands, he feels that way. I did give him the option that he can have the right to change his opinion after the trade deadline. And maybe Duran has been the guy that has changed Frank Finnegan's opinion. I don't know. But Mitch Kofsky yesterday on Fly Lake and Eagles still made it very clear and evident that he does not feel like this team is a playoff contending team. So, that being said, Mitch Kofsky, Frank Finnegan. If I win the bet, you both have to pay me either 15 a piece or 30 altogether, 30, a piece or whatever. It doesn't matter. It could just if $30 total is the bet. I'm not going to expect $30 from each man. No, I'm not that greedy. Anyhow, but so the bet is that if I win if the Phillies make the playoffs. Doesn't matter if they get eliminated. I don't think they will get eliminated, but it doesn't matter. The bet is if the Phillies make the playoffs. If the Phillies do not make the playoffs, which they won't, they will make the playoffs. But if they don't, I will pay Frank Finnegan and Mitch Kofsky $15 a piece or $30 depending on what we agree on that bet. So that's the bet, folks. We're going to work out more of the details, but that's the bet. Now, Mark, you may or may not know about this disagreement. My question to you, sir, what do you think about this Philadelphia Phillies team? Are they a playoff contender or are they going to miss the playoffs?
In the past, I would have maybe taken that seriously, but considering the fact that there isn't any sort of there isn't necessarily a gleam, there isn't necessarily that's a bit of a concern. The starting pitching has been solid, and ultimately our our offense has been humming. But that being said, 2 months ago we were super high on the Mets. Everyone was super high on the Mets, and there was a slight concession that I was like, the Mets might win the division. This might be their year to win the division. Well, they've lost they're like what 2-8 in their last 10 games. Yeah, like now they're hanging on for dear life for the wild card, that third wild card, which, if you look at the landscape of the bottom half of the teams competing for the wild card, most of them are around 500. It would have to be an absolutely epic collapse for the Phillies to not miss the playoffs. I'm talking like, what are they right now? Because ultimately, you'd probably have to be like 83-79 to not make the playoffs at this point. So you would have to essentially go. You'd have to essentially go like well over 10 games under 500 down the stretch to not make the playoffs. And with this roster and how it's been, now that you have with Duran in terms of your bullpen, you're going to have Alvarado come back. I know we've talked about bringing Painter up. It's like all those guys. It's like, listen, the question more with the Phillies has been what we do in the postseason, and this is more of a concern in the postseason. But I do think it does matter, which is in terms of outfield, in terms of like we've only had about a week. Take a look at Harrison Bader. A lot of that trade has been primarily because of how Max Kepler has been ineffective, and the reality is Marsh gives you a little bit of an offensive burst from time to time, and Rojas he didn't underachieve. He's just a limited player, and that's why we sent him down. That's not necessarily a concern in August, but it's going to be a concern in October. It's going to be a concern in a divisional series, because those are going to be the guys that that a lot of these like postseason pitching staffs are going to go after. They're going to challenge those guys. But the reality is, in terms of what we're dealing with right now, we would likely have to go like 15-30 down the stretch to be able to miss the playoffs. And I don't necessarily see that as a possibility.
Well, that's a very good point, and you're spot on. And so, James, I'm going to ask you the same question. Now, look, here's my thing. The Philadelphia Phillies are 66-49. Mm-hmm. I had said that this team is going to make 92-93 wins.
Mm-hmm.
They only need like 27 more wins to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So, because my feeling is if you have 92-93 wins, you're in the playoffs, whether it's wild card or division, division winner. And, Mr. Finnegan said that the Mets are legit this year. Well, someone might have to check Mr. Finnegan. Thank you. Someone might have to check Mr. Finnegan to see if he's got blue underneath that shirt of his. But anyhow, my feeling is that, much like Mark said, this team would have to already start on this epic collapse. And it doesn't look like that's happening. It looks like they are just gaining steam. And let's be really fortuitous when we say this. Alec Baum's still not in the lineup. Aaron Nola still not back with the team. There's a lot of pieces that are still just getting comfortable. Oh, and let's not forget we have a closer now. Like, we also have Alvarado that, even though we won't have him for the playoffs, his job is going to be to help this team get into the playoffs and get good seeding. Look, nothing is a foregone conclusion yet, but I'm just saying, much like Mark is, that this team would have to go through an epic collapse and start now in order not to make the playoffs, in my mind. James, what do you think? Do you think this team is a playoff contending team, or do you think they missed the playoffs?
Well, it's an interesting question because I was like a little bit on the fence before the trade deadline, obviously, and I was concerned about who we're going to get in the trade deadline with Steven Kwan and all that too. But the last few games, I have to say right now, the way they have played the last few games, they're starting to hit their stride again, like they did back in 2022. I mean, they're starting to get that feel that they're getting better every game that they play. I think that's the most important thing because you think about when the Phillies had in 2023 and then in 2024, that London trip against the Mets was basically never was this. They were never the same after that. I don't think they were never the same after that Mets series up in London. I think that was probably the one that probably basically killed their season. When I would say killed their season. In 2023, they had the chance to win against the Diamondbacks. It just like feel like they just couldn't like close the deal, and it's the same thing with the Astros too. They had a big lead against the Astros too, and then they just couldn't hold on to the lead, and the Astros just got in the way, the Diamondbacks got in the way, and the Mets got in the way. But the way this team is constructed right now, if they can get Zach Wheeler back to where he was at the beginning of the season and then before the All-Star break, that's the one thing that's going to be the most important key. You got the hitting, you got Schwarber, who's like ripping the cover off the ball, like I mentioned earlier. You got Bryce Harper, who's coming around, and he's starting to hit his stride a little bit. Saw Trey Turner last night play a little bit better than he expected. Even Brandon Marsh, who's actually starting out to be playing pretty darn well right now, more than anything. But the one thing I'm really going to be curious to see here, and I'll be anxious to see what the Phillies will do here. So I think the other thing that sticks out to me the most is that if the Phillies get into the postseason, it will definitely be Bedlam again. Hopefully, it'll be Red October. We'll be raining down Broad Street again. But for the Phillies, the way the Phillies are constructed right now is that if they get into the postseason, and I hope they do get into the postseason. I'm not saying that they're not going to make the postseason, but if they get there, they could be one of the hottest teams coming into the postseason like they did back in 2022. So I say right now, the Phillies are a postseason team in 2025.
Well, that sounds great. And look, yep, absolutely. And that means the Phillies fans are very happy to hear that. And listen, this is a team.
I'll tell you what, man. I wasn't sold on the Phillies after the trade deadline, but I'll say it right now. That Johan Duran deal probably just saved their season more than anything. That maybe become, in the words of the Monkeys, I'm a believer now.
Well, yeah, and here's the other part of this to think about. So we remember the four aces back in the day.
Well, I could go 2010 because in 2010, like Roy Halladay was just stellar that year. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from 2011, but continue.
Well, here's my thing: is what was the deficit on that team? Is that the offense failed? Mm-hmm. There wasn't enough offensive output. The triplets were kind of like on their way down. They were on their way out. This offensive team with this pitching, and you know what? This pitching rotation, in my mind, is better than the four aces. And that's saying a lot. But this offense is much better than that 2010 team. And yes, I get it. Their record doesn't convey that. However, in 2010, the NL wasn't like what it is now.
Right.
And so that is a big, big difference. So for me, I have this team making the playoffs. For me, I even have this team winning the division because much like they always do, the Mets are Metting. And it's right on cue. It's right on time. And I just feel like if this Philadelphia Phillies team can sustain, success for the next month and a half, you're looking at, much like what you said, James, you're looking at this team going into the playoffs as one of the hottest teams in the majors.
Yeah.
That being said, with all the things that we have going for us, there's still one question mark that is left out there. Andrew Painter. Andrew Painter has not been brought up yet. And so My question to you guys, Mark, I'll start with you. It's August. Not, does Andrew Painter even make it up this season to the majors?
I don't see that it hurts to bring him up in September. Now the only question, this is kind of related to the previous question, is that if it does become, let's say by some weird miraculous chance the Mets turn around and they win 8 straight, and and now they're really pushing up against us in the for the division. Well, I'm not sure if I'd bring him up. But if we're on the pace that we're going, on the trajectory that we're going, which is now looking to be about 96 wins, 95 wins, the question, does it make sense to bring him up? Yeah, especially in a month like September. If we have a comfortable lead, we kind of want to know what we got. Now, a guy coming from AAA coming to September baseball, is that really going to impact us in October? I'm not necessarily sure. But if you're at like 6 or 7 games up on September 10th, it doesn't hurt to bring the guy up. Now, similar to the last question, it's like, yeah, if we take a step back and we start to plunder a little bit, it may not be worth it. Because the priority is, like, first and foremost, we've got to do what we have to do to make sure we're in a good position in October. We can't, like, if we don't make the playoffs, and let's just entertain that for a second, like, that will bring up definitely a good storyline for the offseason. But it will be an utter disaster, and that's got to be the priority first and foremost.
I mean, the conversation that me and Mitch has had in past weeks has been Rob Thompson should be fired as the manager, and I would say I haven't always agreed with that statement, especially because of the success that Rob Thompson has had with this team. But to agree with you, Mark, like, if we're entertaining that storyline that they could have this epic collapse and miss the playoffs, then yeah, I would say at that point, my decision would change to clean house. Take Dave Dombrowski out, Rob Thompson out. Yeah, it would be time to clean house, because that would be catastrophic to what all the other expectations would have been for the Phillies going into this season. Now, James, I'll ask you the same question. Andrew Painter, he's been the highly anticipated piece in that untouchable farm system. Do the Philadelphia Phillies end up bringing him up? I mean, there's only a month and a half left to the regular season.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good comments here, especially on the front of the Andrew Painter's front. So for me, that's probably the most important thing here. Like my dad brings up here, is that maybe in September when they expand their rosters, or depending on the rotation of, say, for example, like Zach Wheeler goes down, probably God forbid his his arm starts to get a little bit fatigued, like Mike Peppernick brought up earlier. For me, yeah, I mean, I would be curious to know what they'll do in September when they expand the rosters. Hopefully, I can see, like, even Mike Peppernick brings up too, with Justin Crawford coming up here soon. I'll be curious to know what they'll do with that on that front too. But back to Painter one more time here. I don't see him coming up here anytime soon. I would love to see him come up soon, but right now I think the most important key here is that, if depending on Nolas, like, his coming back into the rotation, which is already stacked as it already is, like my dad brings up. The other thing too that I would say that really sticks out to me the most is that it all depends on what the rotation will look like if they need him. Maybe that's probably the one thing that will stick out to me the most, is that if they don't need Andrew Painter, maybe he'll probably come up as early as probably next year in 2026. But right now, I mean, I don't think we need him at the moment. So right now, I think that's going to be the most important key here going forward. I think we just lost Joey, so crap. Uh,
No.
okay, give me 1 minute. Oh, okay. Well, that's gonna do it for our portion of the day here because Joey, I guess his laptop battery officially died. So if we can close the show out, I guess we can. So I want to say thank you to Joey for all the questions that he did all today. I also want to thank you, Mark Baker, for coming on again. Before we go, where can people see you next on these programs here on Hardcore Sports Network, my friend?
I should be on soon. The next couple weeks should be back on Phillies this week in Phillies baseball on Monday. Follow me on TikTok at Mark the Solution, and I'd love to come back on Saturday.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Sounds good. Likewise, we always appreciate your work. We always like you. We always like you come on every once in a while. But now, thanks for everybody for commenting on the show here today. And now for everyone behind the scenes and for everyone that made it work here, for Mark, for Joey Marks, and for myself here, this has been the Pattison Ave Sports Show. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Until then, go Phils, go Birds. Football season coming before you know it, and Red October coming before you know it as well. Until then, stay cool, everybody. We'll see you guys on the other side.